Hey everybody, how important to you is your reputation among the brothers and sisters, among men and women, among friends and family, in society? How important to you is your reputation? What would you do to keep a good reputation? And what kind of reputation do you consider good? Whose eyes are you trying to stay good in, impressive, and have a good reputation in? That's what we're going to talk about today, a reputation. But as usual, we're going to start off with our studies on David. And so let's have a look here. In our last chapter, we saw Abigail. Remember, our last episode was about breaking through and having a real experience with Yahusha, getting the breakthrough that we need to have. Well, last chapter we saw Abigail. She broke through. We saw her get in between her husband, Nabal's fight with David by convincing David that he shouldn't take vengeance into his own hands, which was in his best interest, so that he didn't commit the sin of blood guilt, unjustifiable killing of a man, one of the worst possible trespasses against Yahuwah, and there's no atonement available for it. Would Yahuwah have allowed such a man to replace an already failed king? No. So, here we find David in an all too familiar situation again. Saul was once again in pursuit of him and his men. It didn't take long for Saul, the anti-king, to forget and rationalize away his tearful words to David when he saw him last and told him he'd be Yahuwah's anointed king and was worthy of the position. Gone back to his mad schizo ways again, and he's after him again. So, Samuel 26 to 27 today we're going to hit. Once again, some people from Ziph went to King Saul in Gibeah to dobby-do on David, having a big whinge in the dob. We're going to dob on him. So they came to have a big dobby-do on Dave. David has a hideout on Mount Hakilah near Jeshimon, out in the desert. So Saul took 3,000 of Israel's best soldiers and went to look for David there in the Ziph desert. Saul set up camp on Mount Hakilah, which is across the road from Jeshimon. But David was hiding out in the desert. And when he heard that Saul was following him, he sent some spies to find out if it was true. Then he snuck up to Saul's camp and he noticed that Saul and his army commander Abner, the son of Abner, the son of Ner, they were sleeping in the middle of the camp with soldiers sleeping all around them. David asked Ahimelech the Hittite and Joab's brother Abishai, "Which one of you will go with me into Saul's camp?" "I will," Abishai answered. So that same night, David and Abishai crept into the camp. Saul was sleeping, and his spear was stuck in the ground not far from his head. Abner and the soldiers were sound asleep all around him. And Abishai whispered, "This time Elohim has let you get your hands on your enemy. I'll pin him to the ground with one thrust of his own spear." "No, don't kill him," David whispered back. "Yahuwah will punish anyone who kills his chosen king. As surely as Yahuwah lives, he will kill Saul, or Saul will just die a natural death or be killed in battle. But may Yahuwah keep me from harming his chosen king. Let's grab his spear and his water jar and get out of here." Then David took the spear and the water jar and got out of there, left the camp. None of Saul's soldiers knew what had happened or even woken up, for Yahuwah had made a deep sleep fall on them. Supernatural occurrence here. Yahuwah had made a deep sleep fall on them. So David and Abishai crossed the valley and went to the top of the next hill, where they were at a safe distance. "Abner!" David shouted towards Saul's army. "Can you hear me?" "Who dares disturb the king?" Abner shouted back. "Abner, what kind of man are you? Aren't you supposed to be the best soldier in Israel? Why didn't you protect your king? Anyone who went into your camp could have killed him tonight. You're a complete failure, mate. I swear by the living Yahuwah that you and your men deserve to die for not protecting Yahuwah's chosen king. Hey boys, where's the king's spear and water jar that were near his head? Saul recognized David's voice and called out, Dave, my son, is that you? Yes, it's me, your friendly neighborhood spear cushion, your majesty. Why? Why are you after me this time? Why are you after me now? What crime have I committed this time? Listen here. If Yahuwah himself has turned your heart against me, then go and offer up a sacrifice, and maybe he'll change his mind. But if it's your royal crones that have turned you against me again, may Yahuwah punish them all. For they've forced me to leave the land that belongs to Yahuwah, and have told me to serve foreign deities. Please don't let me die in a land far away from Yahuwah. I'm no more important than a flea. Why should the king of Israel hunt me down, as if I were a partridge in the mountains? We'll come back to this underlined bit. It's interesting. So Saul says, David, you had the chance to kill me today, but you didn't. I've been very wrong about you, son. It's like Groundhog Day, isn't it? It was a terrible mistake for me to try to kill you. I've acted like a fool, but I'll never try to harm you again. You're like a son to me, so please come back home. Your Majesty, here's your spear. Have one of your soldiers come and get it. Yahuwah put you in my power today, but you are his chosen king, and I wouldn't harm you. May Yahuwah reward those for their obedience and reputation. May Yahuwah reward all those for their obedience and reputation. Interesting, reputation. Just as I valued your life today, I hope Yahuwah will value and protect me and keep me safe. David, my son, I hope that Yahuwah will bless you and make you successful. And Saul went back home. David also left, but he thought to himself, one of these days Saul is going to kill me. The only way to escape from him is to go to Philistia. Then I'll be outside of Israel, and Saul will give up trying to catch me. Now up here, where it says, David sounds a bit upset because all your crones have turned you against me, you're hunting me. They've forced me to leave the land that belongs to Yahuwah and have told me to serve foreign deities. Why did Dave say he's been cast out into a foreign land and forced to worship pagan deities? Why? Because every Hebrew's inheritance is the land of Canaan. Cast your minds back to Moses and Joshua. What was the inheritance that was promised even back to Abraham? What was the promised inheritance? Land. Every Hebrew's inheritance is the land of Canaan. So David is saying that because of this irrational and unjust war upon him, he's been denied the ability to live peacefully within the promised land. And so those who are doing this to him are essentially telling David to go and worship other deities. Because, remember, ancient superstitions still held that deities are territorial. And David and Saul obviously still believed that too. Deities, gods and goddesses and idols and idolatry was territorial. Remember that? We dealt with that back in Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Moses and Joshua, all what the people believed. It was all territorial. Each nation had its own deities, and when you crossed a national boundary into another country, you left one set of deities and idols behind and came into the sphere of influence of another. So if David was unable to live in Israel, then he would have no choice but to live in some other nation and serve that nation's deities, since Yahuwah had no influence anywhere else but in Israel, apparently. Remember back in Genesis, this is why Jacob was distraught. He was really excited to find out that his son Joseph was alive, but he was so apprehensive and distraught to take his family to Egypt because he didn't know if Yahuwah would be in Egypt. He knew that only Yahuwah spoke to him at the certain different altars and experiences he'd had in the land of Canaan. He didn't want to leave Yahuwah because he was protecting him. He'd made a covenant with him. So, and that's when Yahuwah met him on the road, remember, and said, don't worry, I'm going to lead you in. I'm going to lead you all out again. I'll go before you. Don't worry. I'll be there with you. But that's just to show you that this is the territorial mindset they had. So, for Saul to unjustly chase one of Yahuwah's chosen out of his own inheritance and away from Yahuwah's presence actually amounted to a capital offense against the Elohim of Yisrael, who owns the land of Yisrael and rules over them through a king. So David is saying he certainly doesn't want to die outside of Yisrael and away from Yahuwah's presence. And even this had to do with the ancient mindset of ancestor worship and what happens after you die. I dealt with all that too, remember? Abraham was a big deal buying this cave to bury his wife in. Isaac going to be buried there. Jacob said, please take me back to the land. Don't bury me in Egypt. Joseph said the same thing. Take my bones back to Canaan. What difference does it make when you're dead? You're dead. Well, because they believed in an afterlife. Remember the whole firstborn son, and that's why you had the levirate marriage. If your brother dies without having an heir, you take his wife and have children, so his essence can live on and live on. It's a whole afterlife madness. So ancestor worship, and that's still going on today. How many people go to the grave every day, every week, set up their little camp chair and sit there for hours and just stare at the grave and maybe even talk to them, their lost loved one, freshen up the flowers and talk to them, and particularly if they're an older person with no one else, they're just lost, It's ancestor worship. They don't face that this person has gone. So they're still promoting it these days. They're not really dead. You'll see them again one day in the afterlife. So it's finally dawned on David that if I don't get out of here, Saul's eventually going to get me. Sick of looking over his shoulder. So David and his 600 men went across the border to stay in Gath with King Achish, son of Maok. And his men all brought their families with them. David's men all brought their families with them. David brought his wife, Ahinoam, whose hometown was Jezreel. And he also brought his wife, Abigail, who had been married to Nabal from Carmel. He married her in the last episode, remember? She was a prophetess. And when Saul found out that David had run off to Gath, he stopped trying to catch him. And one day David was talking with King Achish, and said, if you are happy with me, then let me live in one of the towns in the countryside. I'm not important enough to live here with you in the royal city. So King Achish gave David the town of Ziklag that same day, and Ziklag has belonged to the kings of Judah ever since. Something has shifted in David's thinking. It may have been the encounter in the Ziph wilderness, but it also had to do with the fact that Saul had just recently viciously given David's first wife, Michal, to another man. It's hard to put into words the extreme injury and insult to David's honor and reputation as a man, let alone a king, that occurred with that act. Taking a man's first wife, because generally the first wife was the one that, is the first wife is the one that you wanted to marry, the occurrence. And then if you add wives to it, it's because of the culture or because you've got wealth or status. But the first wife is generally the most important one in this era. So culture. And Saul is just taken aback, giving it to someone else. How insulting. David's got a whole new strategy for warfare now, because honor and reputation is worth everything to a Middle Eastern man. So without it, what's to fear? Once you're wrong, once you've been dragged through the mud and you've got no reputation and you're no one and you're nothing, what's to fear? What do you got to fear? You can be free to fight the way you're meant to fight. Be in the warfare without any fear. Because your reputation means nothing to you in the sight of, worldliness. So David was in Philistia for 1 year and 4 months. The Geshurites, Girzites, and the Amalekites lived in the area from Telam to Shur and on as far as Egypt. And David often attacked their towns, taking sheep, cattle, donkeys, camels, and clothing, and killing everyone who lived there. And after he returned from a raid, David always went to Achish, who would ask, "Where did you attack today?" And David would answer, "We attacked some desert town that belonged to the Judah tribe." Sometimes David would say, "We attacked a town in the desert where the Jerahmeel clan lives," or "We attacked a town in the desert where the Kenites live." That's why David killed everyone in the towns he attacked, because he thought, if I let any of them live, they might come to Gath and tell on me, tell the king what I've really been doing. What's he really been doing? Not killing Israelites. He's killing all these other tribes. Where are they? Geshurites, Girzites, Amalekites. Well, we know the Amalekites are the enemy of Israel and Yahuwah. So he's killing all these other people, making sure he wipes them out because they might come dobbing him to the King Achish and say, he's not telling the truth and killing Israelites. Dave made these raids all the time he was in Philistia. So now he's turned into a bit of a bandit. Just raiding, looting, and pillaging. But Achish trusted David and thought, David's people must be furious with him. From now on, he will have to take orders from me. And that's the 2 chapters today. That went kind of quick, didn't it? So we're going to talk about this reputation. It's come up a couple of times in the scripture. And let's look at it. Because there's 2 sides to this reputation. And we're going to discuss both sides. We're going to discuss the positive and the negative side. What are they saying about you? Reputation. In the plain old English understanding, if you don't know what the word reputation means, a reputation is the belief or opinions that are generally held about someone or something. A widespread belief that someone or something has a particular characteristic. Now there's a business reputation where if somebody says the name of your business, people will either go, "Oh, yeah, I had a good experience there." "Oh, yeah, don't go there." I mean, that's your reputation. Same with your personal reputation. If someone says, "Oh, such and such," people are like, "Oh, I've had a hideous experience with that person." Or it might be positive. "Oh, yeah, they're lovely, one, yeah." That's your reputation, yeah. It's the tag to your name. What does your name mean? It's similar when we talked about the name or the word Shem. Yahusha, Yahuwah's name, is his reputation. It's his essence. It's his power. It goes before him. So your reputation goes before you as well. When someone mentions your name, people automatically have a feeling about it. Yeah. So in the Hebrew, the word reputation means valuable. We are going to come back to this word because valuable and reputation in the Hebrew are almost synonymous. Brightness, clear, costly, excellent, fat, honourable women, precious reputation, properly nobility, reputation, or your being. To think, to seem truthful or uncertainly, be accounted, or own pleasure, be of reputation, seem good, suppose, think, true, more honourable, precious. There's that word precious again, valuable and precious in reputation. To make empty, abase, neutralise, falsify, things to do with reputation again. Make of none effect or no reputation, make your reputation void, be in vain. Valuable again. Costly, subjective, honoured, esteem, had in reputation. Precious. So this word, we're going to come back to the word precious because it's almost the same word in the Hebrew. Let's look at a couple of scriptures. These are just the the old King James version of these numbers here. Dead flies cause the ointment of the apothecary to send forth a stinking savour. Dead flies make your ointment stink. So does a little folly in him that is in reputation for wisdom and honour. So doth a little folly him that is in reputation for wisdom and honour. So just as flies can stink up your ointment, if you're a fool, you wreck your reputation. Yeah? A reputation can take 20 or 30 years, a good one, to achieve, and you can tear it down in 20 or 30 seconds. Yeah? In Galatians, and I went up by revelation and communicated unto them the gospel which I preached among the Gentiles, but privately to them which were of reputation, lest by any means I should run or had run in vain. And this is the main scripture we're going to look at today. He made himself of no reputation, took on him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. Talking about Yahusha, obviously. Before we go to that main scripture though, let's look at this word precious, because it's 3365, which is, I'm not going to scroll back up, but 3365 is the same root as reputation. So reputation and precious are almost the same word in the Hebrew, which means dear. So reputation is a precious thing to have. It's dear. Apparently to be heavy. Reputation can be heavy, valuable, to make rare, to inhibit, to make precious, be prized. Something to be prized is a reputation, to be set by or withdraw. Concretely, wealth, abstractly, costliness, dignity, honor, a precious thing, price. 3365 again, valuable, here's that word valuable again. Brightness, clear, costly, excellent, fat, honorable women, precious, reputation. See, it's all tied in with reputation. So valuable, reputation seems to be a good thing to have, doesn't it? So let's, I'll just tinkered with this scripture here in Philippians. Let's go through that. So if there's any encouragement in Mashiach among you, if there's any comfort or love or fellowship of spirit, if there's any affection and compassion, then do me a favour, will you? Make my joy complete and just be of the same mind, okay? Have the same love and operate together in one purpose, not being selfish or up yourself, but in humility, considering others better than yourselves. You shouldn't be looking out for your own self-interests, but for the interests of others. Have the same mindset as our Mashiach Yahusha, who was actually the essence of Yahuwah. Yahusha was actually the essence of Yahuwah, but he didn't consider it theft to be the same as Yahuwah, so he emptied himself of all reputation. And the old King James actually says that, emptied himself of reputation, put off his reputation, taking the form of a servant, and appeared in the likeness of a man. Yes, he humbled himself and became obedient to death, even death on a torture stake. So now Yahuwah has exalted him high, and given him and given him the name which is above every name, so that at the name of Yahusha every knee will bow, those in the ┕𝗪, the earth and under it, and every tongue will confess that Yahusha Mashiach is the Master, to the esteem of Yahuwah the Father. So, like I said, we're going to look at two parts to this reputation, because Yahusha is Yahuwah. He's the Creator. We know that. He's actually the same being. But he emptied himself and took on the form of a servant. He put on mortality and died, was willing to die. Emptied himself of his divine, cosmic, dimensional power. He omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent. He emptied himself of all that and became a man. And when we were looking at precious, there's just a few scriptures there dealing with precious. King's daughters were among thy honourable women. Upon thy right hand did stand the queen in the gold of Ophir. Precious in the sight of Yahuwah is the death of his saints. Precious is the same word for reputation. Precious in the sight of Yahuwah is the death of his saints. We shall find all precious substance. We shall fill our houses with spoil. Just to give you an idea of just some context on the word precious and reputation. But that scripture there is interesting. Precious in the sight of Yahuwah is the death of his saints. It's precious. It's a good thing. Let's tie all this up. There's two sides to this reputation. And as usual, there's a high dimension and there's a lower dimension. You can have a reputation in the lower dimension or a reputation in the high dimension. One's visible, one's invisible. How does Yahusha feel about the death of his followers? Their self, their desires and their reputation. How does he feel about the death? Didn't he tell us not to be surprised or faint when we are spitefully hated because of him? Didn't he tell us to follow him, to behave and walk the way he did? That our worst enemies will be found living under our own roof? Didn't he say all that? Are you truly willing to shut your mouth and become the scum of the earth? In other people's minds. Are you willing to become the scum of the earth? To be trash talked? To become all those things? Become the scapegoat? The mocked and ridiculed among your friends and family? To empty yourself of any reputation or lofty opinion you once had of yourself? Willing to do that? Because this is the walk. It's agony. But it's needed for us to be humbled and die to ourselves. And those around us are only more than happy to assist in that death. Until it's their turn, of course. As the Hebrew above explains, reputation and precious share the same root. So we go on our invisible parallel journey again and see that our reputation before Yahusha and his realm is incredibly valuable. Our reputation before Yahusha and his realm is incredibly valuable. We have a cloud of witnesses watching us. And I'm talking about the high dimension. We have a cloud of witnesses watching us. How are we going to play this situation? How are we going to pass this test or fail this test? Or how are we going to operate and behave in this situation? And there's a cloud of witnesses cheering for us, lifting us up, protecting us in many situations. He's assigned messengers, personal escorts and assistants and people, messengers to us. So our reputation before Yahusha and his realm is incredibly valuable, like gold, silver and gemstones. And living daily connected to this rain fills us up with his love beyond measure. However, the flip side of this experience is that we must be emptied of all worldly appeal, all worldly attractiveness, all worldly reputation, to live in the invisible ┕𝗪. The flesh and all its visible self-seeking aggrandizements must die. Getting this? In order to have a good reputation with Yahusha, you may not have a very good one on this earth. Yeah? That doesn't mean you set out to have a bad reputation by having bad behavior, but it means if by following Yahusha and having a good reputation and proving yourself with him first, your reputation on this earth doesn't bother you. We need to break through, like in our last episode, we need to break through the invisible barrier that separates the dimensions and elevates us out of our lower, sinful, carnal existence, where only the visible, earthly senses and pleasures are relevant. We need to break out of all that. Because when in this state, our connection is like brass. The connection is as brass to us. And we cannot hear what Yahusha wants to tell us. Deliverance has been bought and paid for, but we would rather exist in mediocrity and misery, wallowing in the sin that we love so much. We will never experience the breakthrough, the higher reputation of esteem, the rivers of living waters gushing forth and overflowing from our innermost being. We'll never experience that if we don't consciously allow Yahusha to train us moment by moment, thought by thought, using the 3 rules. Until you enter into them and start putting them to every thought and moment in your life, there will be no breakthrough, no joy, just misery and painful consequence. So we need to prove ourselves to Yahusha and get a good reputation. And practicing the 3 rules allows us to become solid and regular, steady, steadfast for those around us. Yeah? So we're not doing it for them, we're doing it for Yahusha. But the result of doing the 3 rules on yourself before Yahusha, the result of that is over time you will attain a good, no matter what they say or falsely accuse you of, you've got a good, stable, clean, good reputation with the people around you, so that after you've shut up for a time, if you are required to speak, those words will be like a sword, because they're Yahusha's words, and you only speak when he tells you to. So it's not just constant, you shut up and let Yahusha move in the situation. You let everybody have their experience and understand them, because as I said in the last episode, everybody just wants to be understood. If you understand somebody, the conversation's over pretty quick. They shut up. They just want to be understood. Conflict's over. So our good reputation is really unto Yahusha, not fleshly fakehood. It's not a fake religious carpetbaggy reputation where you're protecting your realm, your reign, your collection, your legacy, your this is mine, I've achieved this is me, and I've got to protect my reputation. No, not that. That's got to die. That's the fleshly, worldly reputation. But a reputation in Yahusha is like gold, precious rubies. And that's where we have to go, brothers and sisters, to prove to Yahusha that we are willing to die, sacrifice all that stuff. Happy to be wrong. Doesn't matter. You're willing to be real. And I tell you what, when you get real and you start sharing the reality of your realness, all the peanut gallery, the global peanut gallery has an opinion. And it's better just to be wrong. I'm finding so much freedom in just being wrong now, and let everybody have their opinions. Because if my experience is out there for all to see, then I know people are going to be able to connect with it, because other people don't have the guts to be that real. And I want to go Yahusha's way. And Yahusha wants a real bride. See you.